Hey guys, I'm Billy with Spectrain. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and sorry to those of you that knew this video was coming for the delay. We talked about this on social media a while back about this video that a lot of people were excited about, and I've just been on the road full time teaching classes around the country. So this is my first opportunity that I'm really at home and can kind of edit this footage and put this this video together. Also, huge shout out to Mark and Chris for the video footage. We'll get into this in a minute, but good buddies, and I appreciate them helping out with this video. It wouldn't be possible without them. What is this video? Well, as I travel around the country teaching classes, one of the things I talk to folks about all the time is using shooting competitions and matches to get better at shooting. And one of the big ways that I think I have found personally shooting matches and competition helps me is it honestly provides me a really rock solid assessment of like, okay, where am I doing okay in my shooting and where are there holes in my game that I definitely need to work on, and I can take that back to my training, isolate those deficiencies, and work on them until they become strengths. Obviously, there are some times when you're shooting a match where your deficiencies are blatantly obvious. Hey man, I suck at swingers. I suck at 25-yard partials. I suck at movement, right? Like, especially when you're starting, some of those things are going to be obvious. The better you get, a lot of times, the more difficult it is to sometimes isolate, like, what specifically is going on. Like, I can look at the results in the match, and I can say, hey, I'm behind on time, but why? Is it because I'm shooting slowly? Is it because I'm moving slowly? Is it because I'm transitioning slowly? Like, what's going on? And one of the ways that you can really identify a lot of interesting things that you can work on is in match footage. So what I did is I put out kind of a broadcast on the social media, like, hey, threw the net out there. Has anybody shot a match with me recently that could provide some footage that we could use to kind of compare and contrast some things? And I got a couple submissions. This is not going to be quite as useful as I was hoping because I don't actually have much AMG timer data to look at. I'll show you what I mean by that. I was hoping to have more data that I could show here, but for whatever reason, a bunch of my scores were not recorded. And I also don't have footage from either all my stages or all of the other shooters' stages. But we've got a couple stages to look at with a couple things to highlight that you'll hopefully be able to see really clearly in the video. And hopefully it'll kind of show you how I look at match footage and try to pick things out that are interesting. Now, right off the bat, what I'll mention quickly, because I know people are going to ask, footage. Like the footage I have up on the screen right now is the hat cam footage. The little camera you can kind of put on your hat cam. What most of us are using for this is the Insta360s. I'll put links to these below if you want to pick these up. What's really useful about hat cam footage is it gives you a lot of perspective on, not just the stage and so forth, but also, as an example, you can see the timing here of this clip that I have up right now. You can see that I have my dot actually up and aimed at the target slightly before it's available. And so I can look at it. I can look at a sequence like this, and I can be like, okay, there's my gun up. I'm sliding in. There it is. Bam! I'm firing right as soon as the target's available through that window, and that kind of stuff is really useful to see. Of course, we also have other footage. So this, as an example, here's my footage on the left. What this is really good for is showing like footwork, right? So you can see, okay, how did I move into this position? How did my feet land? That kind of thing. So this is really good for, manipulations, movement, some of that kind of stuff that, again, you can't really see. And again, for me, this is a 360 camera that I mount, so it'll kind of follow me around the stage. You'll see it kind of tracking here as I scroll towards the end. So it kind of follows you through, which is really cool. Again, I'll put a link below. You don't have to do that. You could, of course, just, have someone hold the phone, similar to Chris's footage here. That works pretty good. The problem is, depending on the stage, like you may not be able to see very well, like if they follow you down like this, and that's really great, but a lot of times they have to stay in the back of the stage and can't really see where you end up and so forth. So anyway, that's kind of my quick blurb on footage. Without further ado, let's dive into this stage here. Okay, so we have here first is some of my footage against Mark's. Mine's here on the left, Mark's is over here on the right. And what guys will probably notice right off the bat is that Mark is a really strong shooter, especially for an A-class shooter. He actually shot a little bit better points than I did at this match, but he is behind me by, I think, 11 seconds. Yeah, roughly 11 seconds for the match. So we're trying to figure out with Mark, like, hey, where's this coming from? Because his splits are actually very, very quick as well. And this is a mistake a lot of people make, is when looking at match footage, is looking at something like this and being like, oh, well, obviously I'm behind by this amount of time. I probably need to shoot faster. And what we'll see here in this stage is like that's not actually what it was at all. So I have both of them unmuted. These videos are synced to start as close as I can get them to right when the beep happened of the timer. And so here we go for the first little bit. So right off the bat, you're noticing a pretty big disparity, right? So if we look at here, this is where my first shot breaks, right here. And what you'll notice is that Mark's gun is just coming up, right? And there's my second shot. There's my third shot. And now Mark's first one's breaking. So I was way ahead of him on the first target. Why is this? Well, to me, I think it's a planning issue. You can obviously notice that here in the beginning, you can see where we're entering. We have to enter into the shooting area here. And, of course, we have to engage some targets down here through this window. And so to do that, we, of course, have to not only hit a very specific spot, but we have to get kind of down into a squat before we can see that target. Because of this, what I decided to do was actually enter on these targets on the right. And what you'll kind of notice, if you watch my footage on the left, I'm going to mute my buddy Mark here for a second. What you'll notice is that I'm going to draw to that target, and you'll notice I'm basically standing up here, and now you're going to start to see my level change. You see how if you look through that window, like watch the barrel here through the window, you're going to notice that barrel becoming available now as I get lower. So I'm basically using those two targets to work my way down to get into a lower stance to where that popper is available, and then to where I can transition, shoot this paper, and come over here, and there's a target you really can't hardly see through the video. It's slightly available right there above the nose shoot that I'm going to shoot as well, right? Okay. So that was the first thing that I noticed right off the bat. It's just that I'm getting a big head start on Mark in terms of getting out of the position. Now I'm going to mute myself and let's just watch Mark's engagement here. So you say, well, hey, Billy, one thing I noticed there is that Mark is already out of that position. And if I look over at your video, you're still shooting through the port. And that's very true. However, that's because Mark never shot this target at all. So another thing you're going to notice when we get down here is that he has to create an entire other position. Let's keep watching. I'm going to unmark both of them so we can kind of watch. Pretty much we're working through the same idea here. I'm a little bit behind Mark at this point. So you'll notice that Mark has finished the front array. I'm about to finish the front array. Done. And here's Mark just now setting up on that target again. Right? So, in other words, here I am finishing up. Here's Mark having to come back into the second port to get another angle on that target over here behind this no shoot. It's very tight. It was actually a moving target. It was a bobber that was activated by that partial. So here's Mark shooting that last target. Of course, you'll notice here from the start position, if I can provide a better view here. So here's our two ports, right? I basically shot all the targets here on the right side of the stage by getting to this position and shooting them through these two ports. Mark came across and shot them from up here. So that just delayed Mark a little bit, I think. My observation is that by creating an entire other start position there, basically that was the time difference. Both getting started on this array was a little bit of a delay for him, and then creating an entirely new position to come in here to engage that target. Now, to be fair, this is what I would consider an insanely difficult target. Even if you look at Mark's angle that he ended up on the end, like, that's not an easy target to get through a port or even standing up. It's at a pretty good distance, probably 20-25 yards. You've got the no shoot there, and you've got a sliver of an IPSC target at alpha to try to engage there. Highly difficult target. Might Mark have been better off coming up here to get a better angle than I did engaging that same target? Let's see if I can find the angle. You'll notice here that I don't even have the entire target. It is partially hidden by this no shoot. So I am threading the needle on an insanely difficult shot there, right? And a lot of people will probably say that I made the wrong choice. Do I think it saved me a lot of time? Yes, I do. Did I nail 2 shots in that? Yes, I did. So Mark may not have even made a mistake here in terms of if he wanted an optimal result for his skill level. And he said, hey, Billy, that's great for you. But if you get right here, I can't make that shot. So I'm going to go up front. Yes, it's another shooting position, but I can guarantee my hit's better from that position. That may have been a great decision. Even though whenever you find yourself making that decision, i.e. when you're on a stage at a match, maybe you see the GMs are doing a certain plan, taking a target from farther away, whatever it is, and you're like, hey, that's not within my capabilities. You have, 1 of 2 options. Regardless, you've just highlighted something that you need to work on, right? But you can either say, hey, I really care about my placement for this match, and so I'm going to take the safe route. That's fine. If you do that, just highlight that particular skill set. As an example, taking tight partials from a crouch through a port. Maybe that's something specific you want to isolate and work on in your personal training. If you're looking at the match more as a training tool, though, maybe try the GM plan. If it doesn't work out, you have the same result. It didn't work out, and now you know what you need to work on in training. That's a win. What some folks are going to find is that it does, in fact, work out. They actually are able to do things they didn't think they could do. And therefore, now you've just built your own confidence. Like, hey, man, I can do that. If I just have the visual discipline to put my dot right where I need it to be, and I can press the trigger carefully without moving the gun, that's a shot that I can make. And that, again, now is just going to be a good result in that maybe it's something you want to continue to work on, boost your confidence, but hopefully it's a confidence booster for you right off the bat. Let's go to the next stage. I got one more video, where I actually have video from both Mark and another buddy, Chris, on this stage, and it's going to be pretty interesting. Now, the only video I have from me here is as third person, and I have first person from Mark, so there's going to be a little bit of a disparity there, but we'll see some stuff that's pretty interesting, I think. Okay, so what you'll notice here, or at least what I notice, is that our first shots break essentially completely in concert. If you can't tell, we are in entirely different spots. So right now, Mark is standing about right here, and he's shooting down the edge of this barrel, if you will, over top the black barrel. That's his perspective. I came all the way to the boundary. Why is that important? Okay, now if you can't tell, Mark has worked across and is over on the left boundary there, as I'm all the way over here already. Okay, so essentially what we have here, again, I think is a planning issue, right? When we talk about forced positions that we have to go to on the stage, we do have to go to this back right corner. We also have to go to the front right corner, and then we also have to work up all the way to the front. What Mark essentially did for himself is stepped straight back. Both of us have to step in. It takes the exact same amount of time, essentially, to step to here as it does to take to step into here. But by stepping here, Mark now has to work over here to finish shooting his targets. He has a couple things over here that he can shoot, but then he's going to have dead time as he works back there. So let's look at this. I'm going to mute my video. So here's Mark's first couple targets. He's working across, coming in on this, and now he's stuck against this left boundary. To account for that somewhat, he's given himself a couple targets to shoot here, or really just one, as he works into the back right corner. But there's a measurable amount of time from the time this shot is fired until he can actually shoot the next shot. Right? So there's a big lag there. Again, unfortunately, I don't have a measurement of it, but the time from here to here is time on the clock spent not shooting, right? Additionally, since he's already shot this target, he really can't use that target as he's working down the hallway, if you will, to be collecting points while moving forward. So now he's got these two targets, but he could have used a third one to work even farther down here while still collecting points. So again, to me, just a little bit of a planning issue. right? Because I started on the left, I'm now halfway back here by the time Mark is just now finishing shooting that target on the left boundary. So you can see that as he's shooting that target, I'm transitioning into the back corner. What that also did for me is I used these targets from this position to actually work back at an angle like this instead of coming straight across, which means that I could just transition straight back there and didn't have to kind of retreat. So you can see for me, it's an immediate transition. I'm coming straight into that target. I'm going to switch the audio so you can hear mine real quick. What you'll notice is as well is that after I come through that corner, wow, did the audio wrong again. I now have 3 targets up here to engage, which allowed me to get further down this hallway and collect more points. We'll notice where Mark is when he finishes shooting. So he finishes shooting here, right? So he's just a good bit further back at the time he has to go into his reload versus where I was, which allowed me to get back on the gun a little bit quicker. Here is, to me, one other thing. So we've mainly talked about stage planning so far. Here we have kind of a strategy error, I would say, on these targets. What we're going to notice is we're going to talk about the swinger thing a little bit here. I'm going to put out a video soon about how to engage swingers, but this will be interesting for right now, I hope. On a side exposure swinger, looking at Mark's video here, I'm actually going to get mine out of the way for a moment. We have a swinger that's hidden behind these barrels. It's going to be exposed around the side. Now, when it comes out for the first time, you'll see where it stops. It literally comes down and actually touches the ground, I believe, here in this position. It's going to disappear again, and it's going to come back, and you'll notice it comes back a good bit higher, and then it's going to disappear and come back again, even higher, come back and again, and it's even higher. Right? At sort of where it rests down here, what we call the dwell. With a side exposure swinger, you can only predict exactly where the target's going to stop on the first pass. It's way too difficult to keep track of. Okay, on the third pass, it'll be right there. Like, it's going to stop. You have a rough idea, but you aren't able to aim at a spot where you know the target's going to dwell and shoot at that spot when it arrives there. Additionally, obviously the swinger slows down over time as you shoot it. So, you know, what's tempting is to be like, well, I want to shoot it later when it's slower. On a top exposure swinger, 100%. On a side exposure swinger, the slower it goes, actually the less amount of time that it's really available for. This one's pretty much visible at rest as well, so it may not fully apply. But on a true side exposure swinger, it's going to come out farther and basically stop for longer on that first pass than it ever will. So I strongly prefer to shoot a side exposure swinger on the first pass. Additionally, that's the only time when you can really perfect the timing. It's very difficult in a walkthrough. If you had multiple runs at the stage, you could perfect the timing to where you're going to be like, I'm going to shoot the target, and I'm going to shoot these 4 targets, and I'm going to come back on the third pass, and it's going to be right there, and you're not going to waste any time. Very difficult to do that in the context of an actual stage walkthrough, particularly if you're one of the first shooters up. So what you'll notice, I'm going to bring my video back up and we'll watch the way that I engage this swinger. So there was the steel. I'm now coming to this paper here, and I'm going to go back to the swinger. I had a makeup on that paper, I think. I think that's what I'm seeing there, which is why it was a little bit awkward. But basically didn't stop shooting the whole time. If we now watch Mark's, I'll switch the audio again. The way he takes this back array. Obviously a couple makeups on steel. Again, that's something I would definitely pay attention to in my video. I'm just not mentioning things that are kind of obvious and not very interesting. But if you're seeing you're missing steel like that, that's a great point. Okay, this week I'm going to work on mini poppers at 15 yards and figure out what exact sight confirmation level do I need on those, right? But here he's about to hit this actual activator. The activator is the back steel. So he takes 3 targets. I believe he comes back to this one now. And, of course, doesn't have time to get 2 hits on the swinger. Quick note, if you are in a situation like this where you don't know where the target's going to be, if I come up and I transition to roughly this area and I see that the weight is like this, what's that mean? It means the swinger is coming. So this would have been a perfect time to transition and actually shoot the swinger. So as you come off of this paper, if I see the swinger disappearing, perfect time to transition the gun to right there and be ready to shoot it when it comes back out. Instead, though, he's obviously shooting that paper as the swinger comes out and stops. He's going to transition to it, throw one that may or may not have even connected with that swinger, and now he's got to wait. He's got to wait until it comes back again. Roughly, I would say maybe a second to a second and a half on that stage was burned just waiting on that swinger to come back for a second pass. So those are the kind of errors that we can identify and be like, man, I had to wait on that swinger. What can I do to change that? Probably just activate the swinger, shoot one target, whichever one you wanted to shoot, and come straight back to that swinger so you don't have to wait on it or spend any time on the clock not shooting. Now, we've talked a lot about planning here. For Mark, I think that is probably one of the big things that we're seeing time left on the clock on the stages. Realistically, is in some of the planning pieces, like this shooting piece. He's pretty dang good at, but we're seeing a lot of time left on the clock with the or on the table rather with the stage planning. Let's look at this one. Let's look at Chris. So this is going to be very, very different because Chris was actually on my squad. But I believe he's about 2 seconds behind me on this stage still, even though he basically used my exact stage plan. We obviously talked about it before the stage. From what I can tell here, he basically copied my stage plan bar for bar, but he's still 2 seconds behind. So this will be interesting for us to see where's the difference, even though we're running the exact same plan in our runs. I'll unmute both. Here we go. Okay, so the main thing I would kind of look at here for Chris is actually the movement mechanics. Okay, there's a slight planning difference as well that we'll talk about. But I would also just really be looking at the movement. There essentially is no... what he decided to do, even though he came to the far left boundary, is not shoot these targets on the move at all. Okay? So if you watch my run here really quickly, I'll mute Chris's audio. What you'll essentially notice is that as I shoot these, I'm shooting the move the whole time, so that as I come off of this target, it's an immediate transition, and I kind of post it up on a difficult target, and I'm shooting it. And then an immediate transition to this one, right, with basically no delay, and then working straight forward. As we watch Chris's run, right, you'll notice that our first shots are very close. I was a little bit ahead of him just based upon that entry, I think. I'm actually not sure that these are perfectly synced. I think Chris, according to that, Chris beat me on that first shot, which is possible. Actually, I think it is possible. I know why. Because he started on this far left one and I came on the deep one. Regardless, we're pretty much in sync here. And then what you're going to notice is we both finish the first array at roughly the same time as well. The difference is I'm aiming at that target here. And if you notice where his body positioning is, like he has to get all the way past this barrel before that next target is actually available. So by the time he gets over there over to that position where he can actually aim, which is about here, I'm leaving. So now at the time that he's starting that target, I'm leaving already. You can also notice, if you look at the feet positioning, I don't know if there's any more of the video we can see. There really isn't. But you can see that there's no fault line in sight behind Chris's feet. You'll notice that I'm way back, basically on the fault line already. What that means for me is that the target's available around this barrel very early. So within one step, I'm aiming at that target. And if you watch Chris's position here, he has another shuffle back into that corner before he can actually see those targets. So again, that's another bit of time on the clock that wasn't spent shooting, which is spent essentially running from one position to another. So I'm, again, already done with those back right targets and shooting on the move on the way up. So, this is a classic example of a situation where, the application is going to be different person to person. I'd be asking, Chris here, hey, why did you decide not to shoot all those targets on the move on the far left side? Was it simply a stage planning error? That's certainly possible, right? In which case, we just need to understand how much time that was costing and re-looking for opportunities to shoot on the move on those stages. Maybe for some folks, it's like, hey, I considered it, but I wasn't confident enough to shoot on the move on those targets. Okay, fair enough. We see how much it cost you. Let's really emphasize shooting on the move in our training, both in dry fire and live fire. If that's a big takeaway from this match, I'm just not going to shoot anything standing still for the next month, right? This is going to be a big point of emphasis in my training to gain the confidence that I need on a stage like this. Last thing I want to show you. So I really had one stage that I found that was interesting in terms of the AMG timer data. Again, we didn't get it for all stages. Here's one where we did have it. Okay, so this is me and Mark again, as you can see here. And this is actually on the classifier. So it's a very small, short stage. And what you'll kind of notice is that, here's the results. So I finished the stage in a 542. Mark finished it in a 664. So on a very, very short, I think it's a 6-target classifier, it's very easy to look at that and be like, wow, I was, 1.2 seconds behind on that stage. Like, man, he must have shot that really fast. And in fact, nothing could be further from the truth, essentially. Now, if you're shooting on a match like this that uses the AMG timers, this data is available in the Practice Store competitor app. You can compare yourself to another shooter. You can swipe to the left, pull up your time charts, and this is the data you're going to be left with. What we, of course, notice is that if we go to the very first shot here, Mark was just very much in the hole on the very first shot. Mine was a 96. I had a 96 draw. He had a 168. Now, again, I have no idea what happened on the stage because I don't have his video. It's very possible that we fumbled something. We had a bad grip. We accidentally stepped out of position. I don't know what happened. But what you can clearly see from this right here is that he was 0.7 behind on the very first shot. And then what you'll notice is that, I had a 12, he had a 16. Okay, I gained 400ths there, right? He actually gained some time back on me on the transition. He transitioned better than I did. Then I had a 17, he had a 26. Okay, I beat him a little bit there. We basically tie there on the transition, and then he actually was 100th faster than me on that last split. In addition, our movement is the same within 100th of a second. Now, what you do notice is that the lines here start to get farther apart. So it's like, okay, this whole first half, we're basically in sync, including on the movement, except for the draw. The draw put Mark in a big hole. What in the world happened down here is obviously the question. So now I can kind of go through and I can see, okay, first split, 15, 17, no big deal. 200th of a second disparity. Transition, ooh, we have a 38 versus a 40. So there's 12 hundredths. 30 versus a 14 split. Wow, another 15th, or another 15 hundredths. 19 versus a 27, and then the last one is a 14 versus an 18. So we see is for whatever reason, Mark was just as fast as me, essentially, on that first array, shot the second array quite a bit slower. And so the question is, what was going on there, right? And of course, without the video, I can't necessarily diagnose what the problem was, but this is just a great example of where you can use, if you're shooting matches that are using these timers, you can actually access this data and be like, okay, somehow, my transitions are the problem. Or wow, on a stage like this, my draw actually really hurt me being too slow on the draw. Or wow, maybe not in this case, but if you're looking at this and it's the big movement from one ray to the other. That's the problem. You can be like, wow, actually, just that movement is like the piece I need to work on. And you can very easily isolate specific things you need to work on by looking at this data. Anyway, we might, maybe we'll turn this into a series. Once I get some more video, hopefully we can do some, what would be really cool, I think, is to do some side-by-side comparison, like where we have the side-by-side videos and we have the timer data, so that we can show like, hey, here's exactly how much time you lost in each position and so forth. These are exactly the kind of videos that I make for folks all the time in our online coaching program, but I'm going to do a couple here, maybe on the YouTube channel, if you guys find it interesting. So if you want to see more of these, feel free to shoot me videos if you're with me at a match, especially if we're using AMG timers and I have footage and you have footage. Feel free to let me know. Maybe we can throw some of these videos together again in the future. But anyway, hopefully this video was helpful. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.